Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Doctors of Running podcast, where we, a group of doctors of physical therapy, discuss the art and science of running and the stuff that we put on our feet. Today at the roundtable, we have the founder of Doctors of Running, Dr. Matthew Klein, as well as Dr. David Salas and myself. I'm Nathan Brown. I will be hosting today, and we are going to be going through a discussion on what are the current ailments that we are each dealing with, and how are we conceptualizing them from a physical therapist lens, and how are we trying to walk forward with whatever we are going through. So we're going to be kind of laying our own stuff out on the table for you all, and hopefully that can be insightful for just how we process things and maybe some of the things that we're doing. And then we might dive into some other stuff pending the amount of time that we have. But before we get into that topic, Matt or David, do you have any shoes that you're currently testing that you want to bring up and chat about? Yeah.
I will say this very much surprised me, but the Salomon Aero Glide 3 has been awesome. It's been a great shoe. It's like that really nice balance of a lightweight trainer where it's actually light, like it's like sub 9 ounces, I think for men's size 9. So, it's got this really nice foam that I'm forgetting the name of right now, but it's actually good. And I don't mean to sound rude, but Salomon has been really like talking big about their foams. And yeah, their super shoes is decent. It's just a little unstable for me, but they made a lot of talk. They put out a lot of talk about their other trainers, and then they put this one out very quietly. And I'm like, it's awesome. It's got a nice bounce to it. I've done workouts. I've done long runs. I'm really enjoying it. I just got it to 100 miles and just ripped through the outsole, sadly. So it has better durability, but not perfect. My only issue with this is the upper is has a little bit too much room. So it's the first shoe I've had the lace lock in a while, but yeah, don't sleep on that shoe. It's actually really decent. I've been very impressed with it.
Yeah, for me, I've been running in a lot of shoes I can't talk about, so that's always a roadblock when we hit these types of things. But there, I am in the middle of doing a trail roundup, and one shoe that was surprisingly nice for me was the New Balance Hero version 9, the Fresh Foam X. It was really pleasant. They did kind of a dual density. Yeah, they changed it a lot. The last one was really soft, and it had a good little bounce to it, but the upper was really stretchy, and it was a little unstable. This one's different. It's a lot different. And it's a little bit more structured on the foam. It's like a dual layer or a dual density fresh foam. And they wanted it to be plush, but still feel really structured. And I feel like that did come across. Good traction, Vibram Mega Grip, and the upper is like a knit upper, but it has reinforcements around it. And it doesn't feel like it's overly stretchy. Like it feels like you're actually locked in pretty well. And I could easily see someone just mobbing 100 miles on a trail on that, It's not like super responsive. We're talking Fresh Foam X, but it's like, it's consistent and it's durable and it can take a beating. It's just kind of a nice, high stack, stiff rockered shoe that happens to be a little bit more trail oriented. So it feels nice. It's good. It was a pleasant surprise. Yeah.
Where do you see it fitting from in the range from made for hiking, made for running?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Where do you see it on that spectrum?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's one of the few that I think can do both. It kind of reminds me of like a road to trail, almost like an all-terrain type shoe. It feels like a road shoe in some ways, where it's just kind of again, high stack rocker. Just, it feels almost like what all the shoes look like now coming out, but it is structured really well and it is stable on foot and it feels good to stand and walk in too. So they did a good job with that one. I feel like that's one that I might be writing about later in the year as well. So very, very cool. Pleasant surprise on that model. And the upper is comfortable too. And there's actually a decent amount of volume in the forefoot and there's some width as well. So, which is a big
new
plus
for them too. Cause the Hero used to be pretty narrow.
Yeah. So it's nice. It's really nice.
Cool. Awesome. Well, let's start chatting about our own ailments and what's been going on with us. So Matt, we're going to start with you. Give us a little background on maybe some of the things that typically pop up for you if you are typically someone who's getting injured or having some sort of running related injury. And then we can talk about what you're doing now.
Yep. I will say that I'm very lucky that in the past, I would have a lot of things that would knock me out. Fortunately, over time, as I've learned about this stuff, I'm able to kind of pick it up pretty quick and know, hey, is this something I need to address or is it something that's going to go away? So current ailments at the moment is actually right now a bit of a right posterior tibialis. So like the muscle that runs on the inner side of your ankle is irritated. So it's the tendon specifically, not the muscle. So it's a tendinopathy. So I know I've had this before. I know it's probably been underlying. I just did a little bit too much trail stroller stuff and was a little bit aggressive this week and started to flare up a little bit. Not enough that it stopped me from running, but enough that I'm like, I need to pay attention to this now. The other things that are pretty classic for me at the moment that I had it's gotten to stiffen up a little bit at the start it runs, is a little bit of left-sided IT band irritation, which ironically we just put out a episode on that. So both those are there. And fortunately, they have not stopped me from running. I've actually run some probably one of the better workouts I've done in a while yesterday. But the things that immediately came to mind is I don't let them just sit there. I'm immediately going, not fearfully. So the biggest point is don't freak out, going, okay, what is this? What steps do I need to take? Is it still within a safe zone, or is this a danger zone? A lot of times your bone stress injury type stuff is like, all right, we're in a danger zone, or if you've like ruptured something or danger zone. But it's like, okay, stop, assess what's going on. It's more tender when I'm not running. It warms up initially it's a little irritable when I start running. So it just needs to warm up. So it gets better as I run. So that's a good sign, but then immediately went, all right, I haven't made as much time as I need to for my strength work, recently, just because life's been a little crazy. So it just kind of slowly eased into that. Made sure IT band stuff's usually pretty straightforward. I can do hip strengthening almost immediately. And I'm not very, there's some specific things I do. I don't know if you have to be that specific, but it's just like specific, like really hip hinging deadlift stuff and some really heavy, like side plank stuff, just kind of working on those lateral hip muscles tends to work really, really well. And so symptoms calm down pretty quick on the IT band stuff. The post-tib stuff has been, all right, let's make sure this is calm enough for me to start loading it, doing some kind of active range of motion at first. And then as soon as I knew it was in the clear, started doing you do a calf raise, but you actually invert your foot or put your foot in. And they found that doing foot inward calf raises can actually load the medial structures a little bit more. So I just got back to my heavy calf raises and loaded that, and it's actually responded super well. And while it's still like irritable to touch, it's not bothering me on the run. It's getting better, and I'm just being not cautious, but just making sure I'm managing it appropriately. Measured, yeah, and making sure I don't do anything too drastically new right now.
David,
I'm really
how's
lucky.
that going for you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What's that supposed to mean, Nate?
You're being measured,
Yeah. Very calculated, very measured.
Sorry.
I don't do anything
Nobody
that
knows
rocks the boat, Nate.
Nobody knows what we're talking about. That was just an inside joke that I threw out there, and it's not going to land anywhere.
It'll come up eventually.
We'll bring it back. Matt,
I'll be outed.
Okay. Yeah.
Matt, let's keep talking. So you've been measured with what you're doing with the knee, and then also, is it the same side? Is it the same IT
No,
band?
it's
opposite
contralateral side.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
How do you conceptualize that? Yeah, talk about why, David, you just said it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, do you agree? And why would you say that kind of makes sense that it's opposite side?
I don't know if that necessarily makes sense opposite sides, but just know that I have a history of each one of those on those particular sides. Like I've had post-tib stuff on the right before, and I know I just probably didn't manage it. And I know there's an underlying tendon thing that I just need to load appropriately for 9 months and to get it really to heal the way it needs to. I know I just haven't done that. The left there's some movement stuff that I have that may put me at a little bit more risk of kind of pulling out. I've got a little bit more hip drop on that left side. Again, I can run normally and that's a thing, but I think, things have been really busy too. And I haven't been sleeping nearly as well because Isabella's coming off being pretty sick and having a high fever that finally came down on the third day. But yeah, so there's multitude of factors, but I think the history of those is probably the biggest thing. And then I did add some new stuff. Normally my training's pretty consistent, like intensity will kind of fluctuate, but it's usually like up. They're never usually like a completely down week unless I'm really fatigued, but things are usually pretty consistent. The only new stuff is I added some far more intense trail efforts trying to get miles on some trail stuff that we have right now. So the history of them plus the stress and a little bit of training change makes me not surprised.
Sure. And with the types of injury, injury is a weird word, right? So there's like a consensus definition on running related injuries. I think it basically says that if you've had to modify up to 3 consecutive training sessions or had 3 days of modifications, or you saw a provider, that's what triggers the idea of a running related injury from the consensus definition. These are more like niggles because they're not changing your training.
Right.
When you talk about trying to be measured, and continuing to run and doing your loading, what makes you decide that being the best course of action for you with what you're dealing with specifically?
Yep. I think it's knowing the intensity of symptoms, that they're mostly irritable during either the beginning of a run or they're actually totally fine on the run. And it's not stopping me from doing that. Although I have to admit that I'm, for better or for worse, my body's pretty adaptable and able to push through a lot of things, whether that's good or not. I will be very honest whether that's up for debate on whether that's necessarily a good thing, but I'm pretty adaptable at getting through things.
I will put it on the record. I wish I was as much of a tank as Klein is. That would be amazing.
Agreed.
Yeah, you are faster though. So to be fair, so maybe because you listen to your body more, but yeah, it's knowing it's kind of within a manageable level, right? So it's not interrupting my running. It's also not interrupting my normal gait during the day, even during walking. So I'm like, okay, yep, like I can feel it a little bit, but it's not at I need to pay more attention to this or really start reining things in. If it was that high where I'm like, wow, like even my walking gait is really affected, it's really starting to affect my running, or it's getting worse as I run more, then I would probably start to modulate things. But I'm also lucky that I jump on things pretty quick. Not like it's like, yep, I got to start managing this. I need to identify what it is and start working through this and not wait.
Yep.
And even if that means just doing just a teeny bit, like a little, like it's not like I got to get a full rehab plan, but this is the benefit of being a rehab professional, is going, okay, what do I need to do? What phase of healing? And just, So David, go. Sorry.
Oh no, I think like there's a pretty good little pearl in there of just like not panicking.
Yeah.
Because I think runners in general tend to be a little bit more neurotic. Just as people and the activities that we do, people can get pretty obsessive over the numbers and what they're doing and the output. And they're like, I have to hit this. I have to hit this. I have this. And they can't hit it anymore. And they're like, oh my God. And then they start feeling a pain and they're like, oh my God, everything's going to implode on me.
Yep.
And that cycle, especially if you've had recurrent injuries, can be vicious, and a lot of people have a hard time kind of taking that step back and being like, okay, I'm okay. Like, like it hurts a little bit, but I'm okay. Like, cause a lot of times at the first sign of anything, people freak out. Right. And I think that's kind of a good reminder to just like, don't freak out yet, it just kind of came up. Let's see if there's anything we can work on. Maybe we back off a tiny bit here and there and we work on a couple other things. And then maybe this will take care of itself.
I have some thoughts on that, but I actually want to wait before either one of you to go first. And then I will drop some thoughts on like fear avoidance and things like that. So
the other pearl I think you dropped, Matt, as you were talking, was pattern, like with activity. And one you named was that if it's not impacting walking or stairs or kind of daily life things, that's a different threshold than if those things start to be impacted. But then the other one you talked about was pattern during running. Maybe it doesn't hurt at all while running, and maybe it's at the beginning, but it goes away and then doesn't come back. That's very different than if the pain consistently starts to come at mile 2, and then the next week it starts to come at mile 1, and there's a pattern of worsening and it gets worse during a run, versus the type that goes away during the beginning of a run. That's a very different level of tissue irritability. And I'll come back to that when I go through mine a little bit, but I think that's a helpful pattern of, do I need to back off? Well, if it's going away and stays away during a run, and then you notice that it doesn't come back at all, you're probably in a decent spot to continue what you're doing, as long as your week to week symptoms aren't worsening. So I thought that was another nice little pearl that you had in there.
Yep. I will add one last thing that I forgot to mention, that as the post-tip stuff started to come up, it was like, all right, I probably need to spend a little bit more time. Like for me, having a history of Achilles tendon and post-tip stuff, I know that, and just comfort-wise, I tend to do better in stability shoes. And I was talking with my brother today because he came over and we went for a run, and he's going, a lot of the stuff that you talk about when he listens, he goes, you have a lot of knowledge that a lot of newer runners may not have. And like fitting shoes can be challenging. And like, he's trying to navigate all this stuff because he's going through his own thing. And he's getting ready for this, what's called a slug run, where they do, I think over 24 hours, you run four miles every single
I did that
hour.
once.
Yeah. So it's like, but like,
it's slug run?
like,
that's what they call it?
Yeah. I guess that's what they're going to have it at Shimpui Park near me. So he's getting ready for that. And he had some stuff pop up. He's trying all these different things. And I'm like, hey, this is probably what I did an eval. And he says doing very good. He's doing much better now. But he goes, I'm not sure like how much I can tolerate when it comes to stability shoes. What do you think about that? And I told him, it really comes down to your tolerance. I know that most of the time I tend to do best in a stability shoe. I can handle being in a neutral shoe, and I test them all the time. I enjoy them, but there's sometimes like if I've done a lot of neutral stuff, then I'm like, something can get a little annoyed and I go, yep, you know what? I just need to spend a little time in a stability shoe to let that kind of calm down. And then as I can slowly work my way back. So right now it's going, yep, I need to spend a little bit more time in stuff that's just a little bit more structured, either stable, neutral, or stability. And as it calms down, then I can kind of start working my way back carefully. It doesn't mean I won't run a neutral shoe at all. It just means I probably need to spend a little bit more time in stable shoes.
Well, you answered my final question that I was going to ask without me having to ask it regarding how does your shoe selection change depending on what's going on. So you kind of went through that.
Yeah. I'm also very lucky. We are lucky that we have a lot of different shoes to choose from. It's another reason, like if your finances allow this, I would encourage you to have just at least a small rotation of maybe 2, maybe 3 if you can afford it. And I think that gives you some options. Because training in a variety of shoes is one of the things that we know that if you do it appropriately can actually reduce your injury risk, reduce your injury risk. But then you have various tools to know, hey, if this isn't working, I can actually work in this. And so even if I wasn't doing doctor's running, I'd probably have a stability shoe, some kind of lighter shoe, and a racing shoe that I could just work between as I needed to. And the stability shoe I'd probably go back to frequently if stuff was getting a little bit more irritated. So shoes are tools and you can use them for what you need as an individual.
Yeah, I feel like my perfect rotation categorically has like a moderately stacked, flexible 4-foot daily trainer. It's got a semi-rigid rockered shoe that still has some flex. And then it's got this kind of maximalist, maybe racing shoe with a stiff 4-foot rocker that's lighter weight with some workout/racing capabilities. So I'd have everything from the flexible, slightly lower stack and whatever up to the more rigid, so that you can, on a day that you need that one versus another, you would be able to vary between those things. And then for me, it wouldn't be this into stable shoes, but it would be from like the neutral to a stable neutral category. Get a Topo Phantom in there.
Sweet.
Something like that.
You do like the Topo Phantom.
Yeah.
I do like that shoe. Or at least the 3. I don't know. Is the 4 out? Is it coming? It's coming, maybe.
So. I mean, I imagine it would be coming. I don't.
I think it might be coming soon.
Somebody talking about the Phantom 4, I think. Maybe not.
I feel like they had a few trail updates. The Ultra Venture, I think, got updated, and then maybe the Terra Venture and some other stuff.
Topo, if you're listening, I saw that you updated the Mountain Racer, which is one of my favorite trail shoes, and it looks like you made it heavier. So I want to try it, but I'm scared.
We'll have to check it out.
That might be the most Matt thing I've heard today. I want to try it, but I'm scared.
Don't make me sad.
Well, I'll go next.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people have heard parts of my story over the last couple of years. I would say my general history is one that is relatively riddled with injuries when it comes to running. I don't have a lifetime of running on my belt. I have a lifetime of wrestling and some soccer, which has running, but a different kind of running. So when I started running, I started wrong. And what I mean by that is I always ran really fast. Like every run, I tried to PR. Every single run. No joke. And if I didn't come back completely exhausted, fall on the ground, I felt like I didn't put enough into the run. So I did that for my first entire marathon training, which is why I had issues. Anyway, I did set myself off on the right foot. And that was back in like I started running like 2011, 2012, first marathon in 2017. So that whole time was terrible from a being smart with my training standpoint. It was also pre being a physical therapist for especially the first couple of years of that. More recently, I've had kind of 2 bigger things. The first I've talked about ad nauseum on here, which was the stuff with my left foot and the big toe joint where I had a tear of a ligament. It was it felt kind of like a freak accident thing where it's not a typical running related injury. Usually don't have these kind of chronic tears of ligaments like that, at least in my experience. So I've kind of been working my way through that. But then starting the end of summer, of 2024, kind of beginning of fall, Labor Day, and a little bit before, I started having issues with my knee, and it wasn't even so much with running. I like couldn't squat back like when I was playing with my kids or like playing board games or whatever. I couldn't squat back and get all the way into deep knee flexion, like bringing my heel to my butt. And to this day, I still can't. So I'm 6-8 months, still don't have full knee range of motion. And it was pretty irritable early on too, where anytime I would be sitting, I would go to stand up and it would hurt a lot to go into extension, like straightening my knee back out. And so through the fall, I did my own rehabilitation program where I worked on loading around the knee, hamstrings, quadriceps, a little bit of stability work. And I got significantly improved. I got more range of motion, and I also didn't have that pain when I would stand up and straighten my knee out anymore. But I still couldn't bend my knee all the way, which I'm only 33. So that shouldn't be a thing. And it feels like I'm kind of locked out of it. Mm-hmm. And so I did a couple extra testing. I saw some other PTs who could be a little bit more objective with me. They couldn't really figure it out. We did a lot of joint mobilizations. We tried to treat the joint. We tried to treat the tissues around the structure with like dry needling and with some other soft tissue work. And nothing created short-term changes. I saw Matt at CSM.
With the armchair treatment.
Matt did an eval on me in an armchair in the lobby of a hotel.
Yeah.
Didn't find any changes there. I ended up having a kind of a diagnostic injection in an area that had higher signal in MRI. That didn't make a change. And I think that's how I've started to go about my approach to this is I tried conservative management for about 5 months before I sought further imaging because I still wasn't able to get my knee bent all the way. So not just like, oh, it's a little sore with running. There's like this mechanical issue that I can't like bend my knee all the way. And so that's when it triggered for me, okay, let's get some more imaging. The imaging was inconclusive, which everyone was kind of surprised about. And so then the approach I'm taking now is twofold. One was, hey, let's do kind of a diagnostic treatment to see if this treatment helps. It would help us know if that structure is what's involved. It didn't help. We don't think that structure is involved anymore. It kind of ruled it out. And now I'm on the phase of getting a second opinion. So I've sent my imaging over to a different specialist who I'm going to meet with virtually after they look at my imaging. So I'm definitely in the waters of the unknown. Another part of my journey was deciding, okay, let's see what happens if I do pull running back. Because I ran all the way through the fall. And I would say that running had a minimal to moderate impact on how severe my symptoms were. Where if I just kept it easy and I was just going for jogs, I didn't notice a big change. But if I went and I did like strides even, I would notice it would kind of flare up. And so I was just being cautious with my running. But I was like, you know what? At this point, it's been 5 months and I'm not all the way better. I'm going to actually take running out and see if impact loading and taking away the impact changes my symptoms. I stopped running from around December 4th until, after CSM. So after I saw you, Matt. So it was like 8 to 10 weeks that I took off, like period, off of running. And I saw zero change in my symptoms. I did not get any more range of motion. And at that point, I determined this experiment also was inconclusive and failed to help with improvement. And therefore, over the past 4 weeks, I've reintroduced running at a very baseline level. I started with run walks and I did like 2 minutes on, 1 minute off for a couple times. Then I slowly increased till my intervals were 5 minutes on, 1 minute off, 10, 15. And then I did a 30-minute run. And now I'm running 3 times a week, 30 minutes a time. And this past weekend, I did my first like 55-ish minute run. And contrary to Matt's experience where his symptoms are present and they go away, for the last 10 minutes of my run, my posterior lateral knee pain was present and it came back and it was there during the run. And so for me at this point, I'm not saying that I shouldn't run that long, but it was too early for me. So I'm going to go back to my 30 minutes. And then this weekend I might try like 40 or 45 instead of all the way up at that 55. Because the good news is that after that 55-minute run, although my symptoms were increased during the run, they didn't stick around and I didn't like lose range of motion or anything like that. So I find that to be a positive thing. And in the meantime, I've continued doing a lot of like hamstring loading and just things to put tension and like strain through the posterior aspect of my knee to try to give it some sort of stimulus. So I've been doing a lot of like isometric Nordic hamstrings. So Nordics are where you like lock your knees in and then you like lower your body down. So I'm like going into as far as I can and holding for like 45 seconds, like 3 to 5 reps every day, if not more. And then a couple other hamstring loading things. Again, I can't say it's making any difference, but that's what I'm doing to just try to, in this period where I can't put a lot of load through it without aggravating stuff, like I can't do loaded squats or anything like that. It's at least putting something through my knee so that when I can increase activity, it hasn't been sedentary. So I want to do as much as I possibly can without without it being aggravated. So that's a lot of word salad, but I don't know if you have thoughts or questions.
I actually like that the last thing you said, because I say that to my patients all of the time, as far as like kind of have an idea of where that line is, you know, of where symptoms do kind of start to get worse. And it's like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, right? Like if things get inflamed, injured, whatever, and it's not productive anymore. And then just take a look at where that line is and then do as much as you can below that line. And eventually over time, in theory, that line should kind of get a little bit more tolerable, a little bit more tolerable, a little bit more tolerable. And then that way too, when you do return to something that's a little bit more vigorous, like the activity you're mentioning, that your body's a little bit more adept at doing it. Where if you didn't do anything, even if you, let's say you're feeling pretty good, you still got a long road back to getting back to where that is.
Right. I think the other thing on that really quick, David, and something back that Matt, you had talked about in terms of being fearful. I think for me, the question I've been asking is the activity causing irritation or is it causing damage? And genuinely for me, after 4 months, I didn't know if I was at the point that some of the activities could be leading to like damage of the structure if I had something going on internally in my knee. The MRI didn't show any internal derangement or damage of any structures. And so then I was like, okay, well then I can maybe continue some loading. And I don't think we should be fearful, but at some point we can be prudent to ask those questions. Is there something that needs to be protected from higher impacts? And for me, I had that question in my mind, but again, nothing improved without it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back assuming no damage and kind of moving forward. Matt, you're going to say something.
That goes right into something I mentioned earlier, but I'm going to wait because I don't want to lose this other thought. One of the big pearls that I'm hearing that when I encourage people, when they're either new runners getting into running, or if you're coming back from something and you're, whatever reason, you're easing back into running, there are 3 major variables that you want to think about. So there is duration, which is kind of the primary thing that Nathan was talking about, going, hey, I had my 3 mile or my 30 minutes and I increased it to 50, 55, right? So that's, you're increasing the duration to run. That was a little bit much. You're going to back it off and maybe try a little bit, maybe 40 minutes this time. So there's duration, there's intensity, right? How fast you're going, intervals, speed work, stuff like that. You're keeping a consistent pace. So you're keeping consistency, intensity the same. And then there's also frequency. You're going, I'm running 3 times a week. I'm not suddenly jumping to 5. I'm going 3. So it's duration, intensity, and frequency. These are 3 variables that you can mess with as you get into running, but you need to only increase 1 at a time. Because when you start doing all 3, that can really put you at risk for overtraining, injuries, because your body has to adapt. Running is there's a lot of forces. Your body needs time to adapt to it. So if you're going to go, I've got 3 things I can work with. Which one do I want to work with at one time? And I think here you go, yep, I'm just doing 1 at a time, slowly building this up is the best way to do this to make sure you don't irritate anything. So it's like, choose one of the 3 variables to work on at a time. I think was a really key pearl.
Cool. And that goes with adding additional things as well. Like, let's say you're adding weightlifting, you're adding plyometric training. You are,
adding intense trail running.
That is still different. Yeah.
It's a really good point because I actually, before I started running again, I started a lifting program again. So before I went and started this kind of run walk thing, I had 3 weeks of lifting down here where I was doing kind of full body, really light lower body, and then upper body kind of lifts and stuff like that. So I think that was important to have those separated, where I didn't start lifting and running again at the same time, because then I'd get conflated on what's good or bad or not.
So if we're going to, if we can expand those, so we have duration, frequency, intensity, what would you call the 4th thing? Like other, like
modality
other activities or
miscellaneous, ancillary, whatever you want to call it.
That's like just general
Part B.
activities. Yeah. Just again, it's like, it's not trying to make people like paranoid, just going, I know, like it,
Well,
if
and the
you
same
got
goes
goals,
too.
yeah, like if you have goals, like it's always best to take your time. Don't like go like snail's pace, but just make sure that you give your body time to adapt to each one of the things. Most injuries, and I was laughing because I was listening to one of our podcasts and Nathan asked me, he was like, oh, what are some things to think about for this? And I immediately jumped into the biomechanical stuff, which I always do. And then you're quietly like, well, I mean, don't forget about the other factors. Like, are you sleeping? What's your nutrition? I'm like, like every single time, it's like the really excited golden retriever. Let me talk about these biomechanicals. And you're like, yeah, and then don't forget the basic life stuff too. I'm like, God damn it. So yeah, it's knowing
Great toe extension, baby.
Yeah, yes. It's knowing how to balance this out and go, like make sure your body doesn't really know the difference between a interval workout and a highly stressful life event.
I was going to say life events.
Yeah.
That's what I was.
Yeah. So it's like being able, and that doesn't mean every time you have a life event, you like just drop your training, but it means, give yourself some leeway to make sure that you're adjusting to stress. And stress can be a hard interval session. It can be a very challenging thing in life. So just something to think about.
Well, before we get to David, I'm going to interrupt this programming.
I thought you were going to say you're going to end it.
No, I'm not going to interrupt. And we're just going to not listen to David. No,
is this about the Bucks game?
I'm going to interrupt this programming to give a response to some questions that we've gotten millions of times over the years about the difference between rockers and toe springs. I have drawn a fun little thing. This is just like a brain break for everybody. I've drawn a fun thing on our a notepad that has J on it for Jana. So this is our high tech right here. So if you're on YouTube, you can see this.
Looks pretty good.
And so I've got 4 scenarios. What I have drawn are the midsoles of different shoes. Scenario number 1 looks like a rectangle, because it has neither toe
really
spring
good, Nate.
nor a rocker.
I'm not even trolling.
Because there's nothing. Thank you for not trolling. Scenario 2 is one that does not have toe spring, but it does have rocker. You can notice that toe spring refers to the shaping of the platform that your foot is on. And if it's curved up, that is toe spring. It is taking your toe and springing it upwards. Whereas the rocker is a curvature of the foam underneath the foot, not interacting with the foot. Scenario number 3, like, never happens, but this would be a midsole that has a toe spring, but no rocker. And then scenario 4 is rather common, and it's one that has an upslope of the platform your foot's on. So yes, it has toe spring, and it has curvature of the foam underneath your foot, which is a rocker. So this is showing 4-foot rocker, because rocker can be the entire,
and the heel as well.
Length of a shoe. The bevel, a heel bevel is technically part of a rocker, but for 4-foot rocker, these are the differences between toe spring and 4-foot rocker. Hopefully that helps clear it up. And if you're just listening, either the description helped, or you can go on YouTube and check it out.
That should be a YouTube short right there.
Yeah. Can I add something on this?
Yeah.
The reason we talk about this is that there are a couple different rocker mechanisms naturally in your foot that just when they're intact are really important for normal, efficient gaits, whether it's walking or running. The one at the front is called the 4-foot rocker, and it refers, without the shoe, to your ability to extend your toes and roll over them. So it actually helps maintain forward momentum, because if you kept your toes straight and stiff, it's really hard. It's like getting over a stiff board. Those allow both you to transition over that. And also what's really nice is when you do that, it actually, the function of the plantar fascia actually helps stiffen up your foot. So it creates a rigid lever in like the back part of your foot so you can toe off and push off. So it's a really nice mechanism. When you get a shoe that's really stiff, you have to maintain that, or you're going to get what's that really stiff, board-like feeling trying to get over the front. So the 4-foot rocker of a shoe refers to the curve underneath the foot, not extending the toes, but the front part curves upward to help facilitate that forward roll that gets lost when the shoe is too stiff. That's different from toe spring, and that's where either that 4-foot rocker goes up so far that it pulls the toe in extension, or as Nathan mentioned, there are some shoes out there that just naturally, the front just it's not a lot of a rocker, but you'll have a flexible shoe, but the front of the shoe, for whatever reason, comes up, and your toes are naturally held at some extension. And the reason, at least I talk about that, and I get into arguments with people all the time, is that having something kept on a constant stretch may not always be the best thing. Generally, we want most of the time, some end range is fine, but you want most parts of the foot to be kept in some kind of neutral position most of the time. Some people can handle it. And I've had arguments with companies with like, oh, like I want them to extend their toes because it makes them more efficient. It locks their foot up. And I'm like, that might be fine for some people. Other people are going to be really sensitive to have that thing yanked on all the time, where they may not even have the toe motion.
Andrea is really sensitive to that too. I remember there was a shoe recently where I was like, it was fine for me, and she just couldn't.
Hated it. Yeah.
Yeah. For that exact reason.
The last thing I'll say about this is what's not shown in our fun little graphic is forefoot rigidity or the stiffness. So a rocker can exist, but if the forefoot's really flexible, the impact of that rocker is different than if it's more rigid. Right. But let's get back to our main programming here. We're going to kick it over to David, where he's going to talk about his current running related injuries and how he's managing it.
Yeah, so I'm not injured. So we'll just start there. But I did have some stuff come up. I mean, if anyone's been following me, like, it's pretty clear I'm not running as much as I have in the past, and there's some reasons for that. But over, I think, I've been running hard for a while, and a while being several years of 70 to 80 mile weeks, 2 to 3 workouts a week, minimum 16-mile long run on a Sunday, maybe maximum of 24, with some of those being pretty hot on the pace. And I think it finally started getting to me, and it was starting to get to me well before you kind of realize it getting to you, if that makes sense. And so I think like 2022 was a pretty good year for me. I think I ran like the 1440s and the 5Ks, several sub 70 halves, low 109 type races. And then early 2023 ran 225. And then it all kind of just started going downhill as I went into the summer. And I think I ran like a 111 on a flat course, which there was no excuse for it. And it was like, I know that sounds kind of cheeky to say that, but in all reality, like when you're used to running 2 minutes faster than that, and you're expecting to go run 107, 108 based on what you've been running, and then you just completely tank that. And then it happened again later in the year. And then CIM came up and we wanted to run, give or take probably 223, 224. And you go out in 111, you feel okay. And then your body starts breaking down and you end up running like a 230, and it's like, that's not exactly what you want either. And then, so like that pattern,
unless you're me.
Yeah. And so like that kind of kept happening. And then this last year, fast forward to 2024, I'm trying to remember what races I even ran, because it was kind of a year of like, well, let's kind of see. I did do Santa Barbara half. Oh, I did track and I got hurt. I did have an injury then. And I think that was kind of the first part of it, where like I just wasn't even tolerating running aggressive anymore. And I think I ran like 115 flat 5K and my body just started breaking, and it was just like, what the heck? Like I couldn't even like tolerate spikes. I couldn't really even tolerate running in super shoes like for a hard 5K anymore. And I was just like, what's going on? And then I kind of simmered it down, ramped it back up, got ready for Santa Barbara half. And it kind of happened again, and even kind of worse, like I think I ran a good race, all things considered. It was like a 110 something, especially on that course. It's a very honest course, but it like took way more effort and work than it probably should have. And I'm like, something just doesn't feel right. And then like fast forward a few weeks later after that, I feel like I kind of started really getting the effects of like the chronic fatigue. And that's when I started messaging you guys, like, I'm like tanked, like I would go for like a 3-4 mile easy run and I would just be floored when I got home. And it's like, I should not be feeling like that. Right. Like that is not, and so after a few workouts later after that, I was hitting splits, but again, I was like killing myself to do it. And it just wasn't, and like easy stuff, like, I'm trying to think of like an example. Like there was, a 3 by 2-ish mile workout where it was right around maybe 520 pace, which for me, that is a doable pace. And I was hitting it, but I was like basically having to kick the last 800 to just try and stay on pace every rep. You know what I mean? Like, and then just absolutely dead at the end. And so talked to my coach and we kind of dialed things down for a little bit. Things weren't really getting much better in 3-4 weeks. And then I decided to cancel some races that I had planned. And then eventually I was like, yeah, I'm just not doing too good right now. So I actually stopped running altogether for several weeks, and then did see a physician and looked at some stuff. Thankfully, labs and stuff were actually pretty okay. I mean, there was some stuff that was kind of out of the ordinary, but nothing crazy. And I was just like, well, shoot, maybe I'm just doing too much, and obviously I'm working full time. I'm doing this, I'm doing other side projects and things as well. And I think the impact of doing that day in, day out, especially because like I'm running at, 5-6 a.m. some of these days, almost every single day to hit the mileage and the paces that I'm hitting. And I just took a break from that for a while, and then slowly, ever so surely, kind of started getting back into it over the last few months. And then something else came up. For privacy's sake, I won't say who or what or why, but I was, not me personally, I was in the hospital for about a week though. I mean, I was in the hospital with the person.
For someone else. Yeah.
For someone else.
Yeah.
So that put an immediate halt to things as well. And then I didn't run again for another couple of weeks. And now we're probably, 3-ish weeks out from that, 3-4 weeks. So I've just been kind of just running when I can and lifting when I can. And there's not much structure to things. For the most part, it's been pretty measured outside of.
Thank you. Yes, I was going to just bring it up. Yeah, so you've been
outside of this morning, but
yeah. What did you just decide to do randomly? And was it outside the norms, or was it within your normal?
I mean, to be fair, that used to be like a pretty easy long run. No, one of my buddies is getting ready for a marathon, and asked if I wanted to run with him, and I was like, how far are you running? He was like 18. I was like, I bet, let's do it. And so I hopped in, and then we just naturally did a kind of a progression run without really meaning to. And we were probably running 6.0s or 6.10s the last maybe 5 or 6. And yeah, it ended up being like 18 miles at like, 640 average maybe. It's like, I am tired. I am human.
I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was by far the longest run I've done in a minute.
Yeah.
But to be fair, though, like I know what 18 feels like, and I knew going into it kind of what to expect and kind of where I'm at. I was like, I'll probably get to 15, and then I'll get tired, and then I'll struggle through 3, and then I'll be fine. It's kind of what I thought. And right around 16 is when I started feeling it. And at that point, I only had 2 more miles, and then I finished, and it was done. So I was like kind of a no harm, no foul. I don't have any pain. I don't have anything, anything going wrong. I knew I was going to take tomorrow morning off anyways. So I was like, I'll have a full day to recover. So there was some prudence. It wasn't entirely just
self-imposed. Like, I'm signing up for this. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. I know what I'm signing up for, like in accepting this run. But yeah, prior to that, my longest run was last Sunday at 11. So, and then prior to that, my longest run was probably maybe 6.
Yeah.
Over the last couple of weeks.
I've got a question for you. So I know you don't have like a diagnosis for kind of what was leading to this like excessive fatigue. Yeah. Maybe it was some sort of like overtraining syndrome-esque type thing. What were the early signs that you feel like, looking back, were there any early signs that you could have picked up on that you maybe could have nipped this early? Or do you feel like there wasn't really much you could have changed? Or what kind of reflections have you had?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, honestly, it probably comes down to a life balance. I just do a lot of things, right? Like, and so I think recognizing the signs of stress before it gets to that point, because there were mornings where like it was not uncommon for me to run 14 miles before going and seeing my first patient. And some of those could be some really hard miles, like if it's a workout day. And so, you might have an 8-9 mile workout and you have a 3 mile warm up and a 3 mile cool down. What does that put you at? I don't even know. 6 plus 9, 15. Yeah. Right. So like that's 15 before you see your first patient. Then you see all your patients. Then you do your documentation. Then you come home. Then you write something or you record something. Then I do have the cooking. So I cook dinner and then, stuff like that. And then like it all kind of just added up, I think, over a long period of time. But I think recognizing the feelings of how I start my day, I think has been big, because if I'm starting frantic and I'm trying to get ready really quick and I'm stressed out and then maybe I don't eat as much or I don't have time to eat, or then I rush over to work and then I'm like, okay, boom, 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 let's go, and then like we're working and we're doing the thing. And then you get home and then you're just like super tired just because it's been a big day already. And it's 6:00. And then you have other things to do. And I think noticing the stress and also noticing my own patience with things. Not that I'm an impatient person, but it's just like the things that normally wouldn't get to you at all. And then you start noticing like, hey, that's kind of irritating me. Like, why is that irritating me? That shouldn't be irritating me. Right. Like little things like that. I think it was a very slow accumulation. I actually do give my body some credit for how long it was able to kind of endure that the way it has been doing that. Because truth be told, I mean, prior to 2021, 2022, if I ran 70 miles, I broke. I literally like, even in college, I think every single time I touched 70, I literally had a stress fracture or like something come up. Like I was very, very injury prone when I was younger. And that was like the first time I was actually able to kind of like sustain, now being a PT and doing all the right things and keeping myself healthy, right? Like all that stuff. But I think the sheer level of work to maintain that type of a competitive profile, mileage, do the things, and then do all the other things that I'm doing as well, it was just a lot. And I was running like 70, 80 mile weeks for like 3 years, 3 years straight, without really much of a break at all, unless it was after a marathon or something. And I think it just finally got to me. I think if anything, it wasn't necessarily an overtraining syndrome and more so of just a burnout, probably of everything. Especially once I got the labs back and it looked okay. And it was like, if it's just simply, I'm doing too much, I can be okay with that. Right. Like, and I just dial back and get better and, start to feel good again. And I think the things that made it really obvious, because for me, it was like the running was hard, right? Like I was having a hard time running hard. And there's a difference. I think like if you've been running long enough and you have run competitively, or you know the difference between running easy and racing or doing workouts, and like you have that delineation, like running 18 is not the same as running 18 hard, and I think that is worth bringing up, because it's like running hard got hard, and I was like, okay, well, sometimes that happens. Maybe I'm just tired. Then running easy got hard for distance, and then running easy for short distance got hard. Right. And then I was like, okay, something's not right. And then the same thing with just like fatigue levels throughout the day, when it starts affecting the day to day and you're like, get into the end of the workday and you're just floored. It's like, fudge, dude, like that's not ideal by any means. So just monitoring energy levels and stress and kind of recognizing some of those early signs before they get bad. And I think that's been a big reflection on my own part and kind of managing my energy and my stress. I think I've always told people if it was just the running, I don't think that would have really happened. I think it's the accumulation of everything else as well on top of the running. Because all I had to do
that was prudent of you to go at that point when it was affecting day to day to go get things checked out from a medical standpoint, because in your case it was clear, which is great. But it was it was time to go get it checked.
Sometimes it isn't though, right? Like, and that's when like you'd be biting yourself if something came up and you could have totally prevented it. Yep. So there is a time, even if you're a medical professional, to kind of look in the mirror there and be like, someone's got to look at this. This isn't right. Thankfully it was relatively clear and I'm happy it was. But yeah, just kind of managing all of that stuff. And, the last few weeks have actually been kind of nice, just running, and I'm running when I kind of feel like it. And, if I want to push, I push. If I don't, I don't. And I haven't really tried doing hard formal workouts and things like that again, but that hasn't exactly spoken to me yet. And at the same time, it also wouldn't be prudent to go hit 10 by 1K or like, like I haven't been running that much, right? Like let's just get better at running again first. And I have been hitting some strides and trying to make sure I don't lose too much of that kind of fast twitch stuff, and trying to just make them fun and implement them where I can and where it makes sense. And then, just kind of just doing those things. Does that answer the question?
Yep.
I think,
Yes, it does.
Yeah. And then just spacing out my levels of attention and like effort. Because I think that's part of it too, right? You want to do a good job at everything that you do, but if you go all out on everything you do all of the time, it doesn't. It's
30
never
balls in the air at the same time.
Yeah, it's never a great road to success there, or happiness, or everything.
Yeah.
So you're just going to be tired and bored all the time. So unfortunately, that's probably the least interesting or the least.
I think it's super
positive as much, but things are better now.
It can be a sneaky one.
Yeah, totally. And once the day-to-day stuff started getting better again, I was like, okay, like I'm going in the right direction. Like dialing things back is good. I'm not floored. Like, I don't feel like I'm falling asleep while cooking dinner. Like that's what it got to.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of nights
waking up at all. You like couldn't wake up.
And then I was missing runs because I was like sleeping through things, and then I'm running in the evening because I got to run, and at that point too, things were programmed, right? Like I'm hitting a plan of some kind. And so right now I don't have anything programmed formally. So I'm kind of just doing whatever feels right. And that's not anti-program by any means. I think there's a lot of value to having programs and training programs. Yeah. And I want to make sure that's very, very clear. But yeah, I think I'm just kind of just getting back to running again and trying to kind of get the enjoyment out of it again too. Cause I think I had a very business kind of relationship with it, where it's like, I'm doing this to get this or to do this. I'm not exactly doing this because it's fun per se.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting kind of psychological experiment there to kind of go through unintentionally, but it's good. I'm not floored. I'm not, exhausted all the time, and things are coming back around. I'm feeling more like me again. So that's great.
Good. Matt, you're going to say something, and also don't forget to circle back to the fear thingy that you wanted to talk about.
Do you have any last questions, Nathan, for David on this stuff before I kind of summarize a little bit? I think this is actually perfect, David, to have the kind of three distinct things where mine are fairly clear, musculoskeletal. Nathan, we're kind of, it's not as clear, but it's going, okay, you've tested this and going, okay, it's not being affected by running for the most, unless you go too far. Right. So that's going, okay, so you can run. So you're learning how to kind of strategize this. And then David, yours is the kind of the final piece of going, yeah, this is not a like cut and dry MSK or musculoskeletal thing, that there's probably a more global, whether it's endocrine, whether it's whole body system, nervous, like everything involved, going how you feel, going, yeah, when you're a runner or you're any athlete, it's not just, hey, how's this tendon feel, but it's looking at the whole person, going, where is this coming from? But then also being able to identify, hey, here are these other this is now affecting beyond running. Not only were you experiencing fatigue with easy runs, then it was like you couldn't wake up. You had higher irritability, which is also a classic sign that something kind of deeper non-MSK is going on. And then going, okay, this is now affecting my daily life. And so now I really need to get this checked out. So even if it's not the same systems, the same concept is it just during running? Okay, I need to pay attention to that. But now that it's starting to really extend beyond that, this is more serious, and we need to consider a physician and some whatever, whether it's blood work, whether it's additional stuff. But it wasn't like that wasn't the first thing you went for. It was like, okay, I need to experience this. What's going on? Let me retest. And all three of us kind of talked about how we did that for very different systems. But then it was okay, so here's when I need to escalate this, or here's, it's still okay. This is manageable, so there's different levels of being able to recognize when this is something that you need to escalate, maybe double check, and other things like, okay, this is more manageable. It's not affecting the other things. So I think this was a perfect group to kind of have three different experiences and go through this. The reason I wanted to talk Nathan, or David, is there anything you want to add before I jump into the fear avoidance component?
Nope.
Sweet.
Go Warriors.
So
I knew it. I knew that was coming, and I almost said the same thing.
Oh, you know what I will also say? This is the most boring March Madness
Oh,
that has ever existed, ever.
especially for us because our
Dude.
teams lost and
Yeah, I was
we don't
really
need to talk
hoping they
about
would
it.
meet each other.
we get to
you
meet
know?
each other.
And it could have happened, maybe. I don't know. But anyways, the fact that it's I also just love trolling both of you. It's great. But because I know this is driving Matt crazy right now. But
Yeah,
for those
no
that are
idea.
following, so the Elite Eight games just finished right before we recorded this. So that would have been the Michigan State and Auburn. Every single 1 seed is in the Final Four, and it annoys the crap out of me. Because it was like it was like such a boring storyline. And then the Elite Eight this year was a 1 versus 2, 1 versus 2, 1 versus 2, 1 versus 3. There was like no true like Cinderella run or like anything like if you count Arkansas, but they're coached by Calipari and like if you told me Calipari could be on any team with any number and it's like they'll be fine, right?
They're coached well then.
Yeah.
Say it.
I have more to say. I told this to David already, but the one pro to all the 1 seeds making it is Henry, my 7-year-old, picked all the Final Four correct and had 7 out of the 8 Elite Eight correct. And so he's in first place in our family bracket, which is like 15 or 16 people. So pretty exciting for him. That's the only pro. Plus David Salas and Henry share a birthday. So basically David is winning the bracket because they're birthday buddies.
Yes.
So it is a good thing for David as well. And should we just turn this into an NAL podcast talking about like the influence of the current state of NIL on like what's going on in college athletics, but then the potential changes that are coming with revenue sharing and how we're kind of in this flux state. We don't know what it's going to actually turn out at, but let's go over to Matt. What do you want to talk about with fear avoidance?
I feel like I have to get my brain back on track. All right. So going back.
The way you said that.
I was
There's
out of
always
it.
interesting things I could talk about, but hey, here's fear avoidance.
The NIH deal stuff is kind of interesting to me, to be honest. I'm
NIH.
NIH is
NIL.
even when you're NIH is the National Institute of Health.
I know,
that's where a lot of grants came from for research. So
even when he's not trying to be.
Yeah, it's okay.
Fear avoidance.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So
please tell me it's in a PubMed review that you're about to.
No, it's the stuff that I teach. So Nathan and I share some similarities where we both teach a modalities course at our respective universities. And the challenge with, and we've talked about ice, heat, massage, all the kind of stuff and the kind of variable responses. But what I did with my students is I took them down a very intense journey on pain science because I really wanted to understand, because you can look at a modality like, example, we've done an episode on foam rollers before, and you can go, well, the evidence says this doesn't do anything. And then you're going to have somebody that actually responds really positively to it. And there might be some factor where they're like, this person just whatever mechanically or whatever responds well. But there's also this other factor of how people respond psychologically to the things around them. And so when you talk about pain, people need to realize that pain is not just an on-off switch, or like you always push here and it hurts. That's not how that works. Pain is a very multi-factorial complex thing. The way I like to break it up, and I'm going to try to keep this simple because there's actually a lot more of this, is there's 3 kind of primary phenotypes or parts of this. Is there's nociceptive type pain. That's your like, I poke myself, it hurts. It's really consistent. Ow, 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 right? There's a lot of receptors and different things and nerves and areas in your skin and your extremities and what have you, all of your body that like, it's consistent. It sends a signal to your brain. That's how that works. That's nociception. There's also neuropathic pain, and that's pain that's very specific to nerves or nerve irritation. You usually get your numbness, tingling, your shooting kind of stuff. And then you have your nociplastic pain, which is probably one that people aren't really aware of, but that's more of your like central type stuff. That's how your brain's interpreting things. That's how, like, what level of threat you're perceiving. You have to realize that fear avoidance and fear directly impacts pain, because pain is technically a threat response. It's your body's way of saying, hold on here, what's going on? We have to protect ourselves from damage. And you can have pain without actually having any damage. For example, a really good example of this is someone with phantom limb pain that's had an amputation. They don't have a limb, but if you ask somebody about this, a large portion of that population will have very intense pain. It's very real. And if you hook up fMRIs, their brain is very much really like all these sensors are really firing up. So they really experience pain in an area that doesn't exist. So pain is a threat response. The more you know, right? That's why we're so lucky to have the knowledge that we do, that we can, a lot of things we're going to be able to go, okay, I understand this. We are naturally going to probably have a little bit less symptom, little bit less pain intensity, because we're able to go, I know what this is. I know how to react to this. If it's really intense, I also know how to react. And that's the beauty of the more you educate yourself and learn about the body and the more experience you have, the more you can go, hey, you know what? I know this is flaring up a little bit, but I have a good idea what this is. Or, I need to be patient before I jump my horses or jump the gun or whatever phrase that I'm going to say incorrectly. Let me reevaluate and really think about where this is, because panicking is only going to increase your symptoms more. The more you can really try to go, let me take a breath, try to get some blood flow to my brain so I can logically think about this, the better you're going to do. And there's very good evidence that people that have really high fear avoidance, they freak out really intensely. Like, oh my gosh, they tend to have higher levels of pain and chronicity of symptoms. People that tend to be a little bit more calm and tend to be able a little more level-headed and approach things carefully, which I have gotten to be able to be over my lifetime, but I still freak out plenty. They tend to have lower levels of pain and chronicity, because pain isn't just a physical thing. It is a very complex thing. And the more you can approach it carefully, and hopefully learn from what each of the three of us have shared, the more we hope you're going to have more controllable stuff. And pain isn't your enemy. It's a friend. It can get out of control. But learn your relationship with it. It's not a bad thing. It just guides you. And you just have to be able to react and go, okay, what does this mean? What does this mean in the context of things? And hope that helps, because fear avoidance definitely, if it's really high, can put you at risk for lots of injuries and repeated things, and definitely can sensitize you where you react even more and have more pain just because you've had these experiences. So this does get a lit, like if you're really experiencing repeated stuff and it's starting to get worse and worse and worse, and it looks like it's non-MSK, make sure you see the right provider, right? That's part of us being the doctorate level of PT, is knowing when to refer to. And there's some really awesome people, be it physicians, be it some of the phenomenal psychologists out there to kind of help you work through stuff. So try to see if you can identify where it is, approach it calmly and go, how do I really work through this? And how do I make intelligent decisions about this? I promise you your pain will be more manageable.
Yeah. I think as we wrap things up here, this little conversation makes me say we definitely need to bring on some sort of pain scientist to have them share their research, maybe Adrian Gray or something like that. Like bring on somebody who has been doing this for a long time and doing the research in this sphere. It'd be really fascinating for us to hear. The second thing I was going to say is, as a coach, so like I coach with Pineries Running, we've got a couple PT coaches. I think that's one of the greatest spaces we fill with our athletes, is they have something pop up, they're concerned about it, and we can just provide some statistics from research or an explanation for what is typical, and just talking about that knowledge piece of like, this is how you can be thinking about this. And that really helps runners who are going through something for the first time and haven't had the experience to draw back on. I'm like, oh yes, this comes and goes and that's fine. Having that at your fingertips with coaching, I think, is one of the best things you could get out of coaching that you don't get from training plans. Because having somebody who knows a bit about that stuff can be helpful. So thank you both for being vulnerable about what's been going on in your physical body and and beyond. It's a huge gift for me to be able to learn from y'all in that way. And hopefully us sharing our stories has helped you all think about your own stories as well. And if you have stories you want to share, please feel free to interact with us. You can send us emails or you can share them publicly. We'd love to hear them. David, did you have one last thing you wanted to say?
Yeah, I mean, I can go over like seasonal pain of being a Dallas Cowboys fan too, if you would like.
I knew it.
Yes. Especially in October.
Oh, it's rough.
in November.
We should do a survey based study. The incidence
all
of
of my other
chronic
teams have been
pain,
good to me.
the incidence of chronic pain syndromes in Cowboys fans during
Exactly.
During the playoffs.
I didn't want to cut you off, but there was a moment there where I was like, does that count for Cowboys fans? Like,
That's good.
I saw that look in your eyes of like,
I was like, he wants
Here comes the
control.
sports thing.
Yeah.
Here comes the sports thing. All right. Thank you all. And feel free to let us know if you have any other things you want us to discuss. You can reach out to us at doctorsofrunning@gmail.com or comment below, and we'll talk soon.